And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fabulous episode of the Real Talk with Rob Tavi. Today, I have an amazing guest with me, Chris Church, who is revolutionizing the supply chain between manufacturing components and hardware, really bridging the gap between, from innovators and R&D into building a full production, and really getting to nitty gritty of what is the supply chain, how does manufacturing work, and how do the components work, and what we are in today, and how technology is evolving, innovating, or is innovating the future for our industries and for for the whole world in general. So, Chris, pleasure to have you on the Real Talk.
It's great to be here, Rob, and thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking with you, and it's great to be here on the podcast with you today.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you're as the founder and chief product officer at MacroFab. What does that entail, and how did you get there?
Well, excellent. You know, at MacroFab, we're a digital electronics manufacturing platform. We're really connecting companies, no matter where they are in their production, whether it's prototypes or mid-volume, all the way up to high volume, with stranded labor assets in North America. That is to say, we're really helping to connect our customers with factories, whether it's a factory we own or one of our partners, and really, focusing on giving them a lot of supply chain diversity and solving those problems. And, in my role as chief product officer, I lead our technology teams. That is product, software development, customer support, business intelligence. But really, at the end of the day, my job is really about delivering an excellent customer experience. Whether it's through our platform, through our human processes, kind of wherever we need to, kind of looking in there and just really making sure that we're living up to the promises every day. How I got here is actually a pretty easy question. I created the job. I I had a robotics company before this, and so I was on the customer side for electronics manufacturing, and I just wasn't getting the experience I wanted. I wasn't getting the tools I wanted. I like to say for 30 years, all the investment went into the manufacturing line at the factories, and very little went into the customer interface. And so, I started MacroFab, and with the idea of building the service, the product, that customer interface I really wanted to have.
Yeah, again, bringing technology into the supply chain of manufacturing. Of course, we are, we're the basis of any invention or any type of hardware that we are in the world. And really, it's funny. The last couple of years, I think the forefront of supply chain is on headline news everywhere because of logistics, supply chain, the shortage, and the pandemic kind of lit the fuse to really bring the awareness to the industry of manufacturing and how through the last, I would say, 33, 4, 5 decades, it has transitioned, especially the last 2 decades, to about all of the subcontract manufacturers and all the outsourcing and all the things that's happened from, because of course, at the end of the day, we're on the business to make money at one day, and everybody's about profitability. How do we get those, lower costs at the same time, to the consumer or to the customer in general, to give them a better product, lower cost, to be more competitive in the market. And a lot of that happened with outsourcing, and outsourced to especially Asia is the big trend. China and Southeast Asia, the big areas where a lot of assemblies and board filling is happening. And then, of course, it gets distributed back to Europe, to the US for the final product to the customer, or around the world globally. And really understand, where we are, and that it's got so complex because the subcontract manufacturers that everybody because it has subs, everybody contracts out different pieces of their widget, whatever they're making, to different facilities and what's going on around the world. So now bringing that back, where today, I think MacroFab really today is bridging a gap. My assumption is bridging a gap because a lot of people want to bring some manufacturing back. They want to have control of their supply chain. They want to be able to deliver to their customers faster, quicker, have more data analytics, business intelligence, understand supply chain. So I think on your platform, really, because basically I think so was software, right? You're a software-based platform that then brought in the manufacturing and bridging two gaps between the inventor of a product and the manufacturer, and being that service provider, correct?
In a lot of ways, yeah. So we actually are a manufacturer also. We have a full manufacturing engineering team in-house. We have procurement, program management, all sort of the traditional functions you have in contract manufacturing, but it's all powered by our technology platform. and it enables us to spread workloads across multiple factories. And so one of the, when you kind of think about one of the reasons a lot of companies are coming to us today, and I think it's really interesting that you talk about, labor cost and, everyone wanting everything to be cheaper. For most of recent history, and I know we have some people on our team who are young enough that their entire life, all manufacturing has happened in China, right? For the most part, right? At least that's what people think. And, I really recall early on when we started this business, everyone said, why do you do this? Everything's made in China. I'm like, well, it's not really. In fact, there's, today there's something like about $250 billion in manufacturing in North America for electronics. So it's a really, really big market that's really a lot of people aren't aware of and how exactly it works. And one of the things that we've really seen over the past, maybe 5 years really, is a recognition that you can't just keep sending it to a cheaper location. You can't move all the production in the world to a cheaper labor location, right? We now are starting to see the global orders changing a little bit. It's getting a little riskier for a lot of companies, and supply chain diversity is what matters. That's how you can ensure that you can continue to get product out there. And the idea of single sourcing things, all of our customers want the ability to multi-source, but that is a nightmare in management. And that's really where we come in. We're able to streamline and single source the materials, for example, while multi-sourcing the labor. And our technology enables us to do that in a really intelligent way, to be able to take a whole catalog of products from a customer and look at how we can cross those together, how we can put the manufacturing in the right factories without losing the advantage of combining those bills of materials into one purchasing stream. And being able to route that, being able to reutilize test equipment, being able to retrain factories very, very quickly. Really, when we think about it at the end of the day, we're trying to solve that in a lot of ways through technology, solving the I would say that supply chain diversity problem. And when we talk about how we create cost savings, traditionally we would say, go to a factory. I want you to do this, but I want you to do it cheaper. And there was this vision that we'd have these robotic factories that build everything. And there are some robotic factories out there, and they're good fits for certain products. But how does your product transition from that prototype factory to that low volume and mid volume, and then finally onto that robotic factory? That's really where MacroFab comes in, is managing that transition through our software platform.
So right now, explain the verticals. How many different types of business services do you do in the industry of manufacturing?
We tend to look at, we talk about solution space, and we'll often look at that as sort of a stream. You go from the engineer all the way up to the purchasing manager and to the factories that are producing it and the distributors selling the components. So when I look at it from a solutions perspective, we have a just-in-time self-service manufacturing solution for low volume, mid volume, and R&D. So engineers can come in, they can upload their designs, instantaneously get a quote, get manufacturability feedback and supply chain feedback at the earliest design stages. So we go ahead and start resolving those. And then as they're transitioning into higher volume production, the engineers can manage that data over to their purchasing teams, and their purchasing teams can start placing larger orders. And then when they need to start, whether it's one product or multiple products needing a multi-manufacturer solution, we're able to come in there and actually manage that whole process, whether we're talking thousands or hundreds of thousands of units in parallel factories, and that's managed there. Now, one of the big solutions we have that helps to really enable all this is about multi-source inventory management. So if we think, you're in the business of components, right? And, one of the things that we really see is, especially in today's market, components are coming from a lot of different places for customers, for the OEMs out there, right? They may have some stock that they were able to acquire years ago and they're holding on to, and they need to deploy to the right factories at the right time, and they need some turnkey. So our platform enables the customers to manage both their own inventory and the turnkey inventory all together in one place, and be able to deploy that to different products at different times. So we give our customers one view of that inventory. They can store it in our warehouses, and we can get it out to the right factories and enable them to manage that as well.
I want one question. I'm a little bit challenge for you here, because one thing, as
Mhm.
we know, you know it well, is
Mhm.
manufacturing is a very traditional industry, especially in the U.S. I would say probably 10 to 20% of the big manufacturers in the States are very technology advanced, or going to Industry 4.0, where those
Mhm.
standards are very business intelligence. A lot of the smaller guys are still working off, I mean, kind of the analog basis of Excel sheets, the very, very I mean, I would say not even robust systems, of basic old ERP systems that were built 20, 30 years ago, that don't really connect to anything. And it's all about, give them components, give us a board, fill the board, especially contract manufacturers.
Mhm.
OEMs different from contract manufacturers, and because they build, they're not large, they're probably 10, 20, 30 to $50 million. Even there's some
Right.
$100 million companies are still not so advanced.
Mhm.
How the partners you work with, do you also help, like EMS people you work with, or partners that you use them as a source or as a service? Do you also go in there and help? Okay, these guys have a lot of competitive advantage. Like, key with help them evolve their technology of how you can communicate with them, because you're talking about inventory, the management
Mhm.
side. How
Mhm.
can it's hard to get all that data out and put into your system to give to your customer.
Yeah, and so I think you hit on a good point, and I would even kind of push back a little bit and say
Yeah.
even some of the larger manufacturers, some of the largest in the world, may have some great technology systems, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're being fully utilized through every aspect of the business. And that's where I think a lot of manufacturing has really struggled. We talk about Industry 4.0, but what does that mean all the way up to the customer level? What's the interface to the customer for that kind of data and those kind of tools? And we find in a lot of cases it's still missing. It's still spreadsheets. Even at very large organizations, customer experience is managed through a spreadsheet. And so, our approach to working with manufacturers is really to meet them where they are, and to really work to ensure a great customer outcome, no matter what level of technology that factory has. Obviously, we want them to have better technology, and we, through our own platform, give them some tools to better, manage status and, get the data they need to build the job. We really kind of, we maintain that digital source of truth about the product. You might call it your digital twin or whatever. So all that history, everything that's going to go on, everything you need to know about how to build this product, you can get through our platform. But one of the things that we know it's very difficult to do is to go to a small manufacturer, someone that's making $5 or $10 million a year, and say, well, you can start making money when you go through this really heavy IT overhaul, this big lift. It's great if you're wanting to do that, but how do we make you successful even if you don't have that? How do we connect you to that data and give you access to it and give you the ability to report effectively? That's really been our approach to date. As we go forward, obviously we're going to be, pushing more on the technology, because it does really, when you get down to the factory level, if you have a great ERP, great MRP, a great MES, right, it really helps us to connect into that and give the customer better visibility into what's going on. But one of the things that we're working on, and we have some new products coming out, or solutions, if you would, over the next year, are really around connecting to different parts of the manufacturing process, and giving the customer access to those regardless of what systems the manufacturer has in place. So we think about your test infrastructure, whether you're talking about test fixtures and test data. How do you manage that? How do you get that off the fixtures? How do you get it into a reportable environment? How do we do traceability back into your devices once they're in the field? If you have an issue, how do we determine everything that went on with that, regardless of what kind of systems the manufacturers have available to them? So that's been a real focus for us, because again, for us, it's about the customer at the end of the day, right? What gives them a great experience? What gives them the data they need to be successful? We know the manufacturers will follow the customers, right? So that's that starting point. Get the customers hooked on that data, hooked on those live feeds, and then encourage the factories to integrate their systems more and more into those.
Yeah, I mean, as well as you kind of say you're a disruptor in an industry of kind of bridging, but giving a value of a service, and as well educating both sides.
Mhm.
You have to educate both sides because today, everybody talks about data, MRP, tech stacks, building this intelligence, having a product information management system, having a source of truth.
Mhm.
All these things are these new terminology acronyms around, like, really, what do they mean?
Right.
And how do they work and how they function? We have them, they're available. The challenge is for the traditional manufacturer or a contract manufacturer, and even the OEMs who create, or just are just engineers. They
Mhm.
don't get both sides, and it's like understanding the data. How do you read the data? How do you integrate it? What's it going to
Mhm.
solve for us? And then training them through this process. And again, that's where the value comes from. Like, this is what
Wow.
we're going to do, and we will help you not just build your product at a more efficiently and give you the product faster to meet your customers' demands, at the end of the day, generate more revenue. We're also going to train you at the same time with our service how to improve your internal process, improve your efficiencies, improve the process. And so again, it's kind of a disruption as a value service. It's not like you have a margin. Everybody's in there to make money, but you have a margin, but you're quantifying their results, both
Mhm.
sides.
Right.
You're
Right.
helping them and introduce customers, from the EMS side, to introduce customers they've never seen before, or products and services that you can change around. They have all these abilities, but and there's the capacities, but they're not being used because they don't have the customers. And you can fit that right customer
Mhm.
to fulfill that capacity that generates that machine or the test machine or whatever they're doing. And
Right.
again, that's kind of a disruption, and all it comes from the data sides. Like, what can we do? How can we retrain? How can we
Mhm.
use, automation, but retrain the staff and the people and engineers?
Right.
To me, it's a disruptor. Disruptors are the cause of innovation and moving things forward. It's not a bad
Right.
term. Like, disruption is good. It creates
Yeah. I mean,
innovation, creates people to
yeah.
start
That's
thinking, right?
exactly. You can't have innovation without some form of disruption.
Correct.
But yeah, I really want to hit on that because that's one of the things that we've worked pretty hard on, which is really matching the factory to the design.
Yep.
Because this has been a real big challenge for customers. If you think about that, you want to go out there, you want to find the right factory to build your product. You're going to go out and get a bunch of quotes, and if you're a big enough customer or the product is financially interesting, everybody's going to want it. And how do you vet those factories? And traditionally, like, you go in, you'll do an audit, right? You'll answer questions. Everybody's seen the same questions. We've all been through the same audit over and
Yeah.
over, right? And everyone knows how to answer it just right. And you're left feeling no better than you did before. So one of the things that we built early on is, we internally call it our factory AI, which is the ability to match based on actual performance data against similar designs, how well a particular factory is likely, how likely they are to succeed with your objectives given this design. And we find some very interesting results in there, right? We tend to think that we want all the factories with all the latest equipment, all the tools, all the coolest stuff out there.
Fancy gadgets.
Right.
Yeah.
But depending on your product,
Yep.
you may actually be a better fit for a factory with older technology because they've really dialed in that equipment and that process towards designs like yours, and they just get consistent, repeatable results. Whereas that fancy new factory, right, with all that, with millions of dollars in great new equipment, is really good at producing a cell phone, but not at your AC controller, right? Know,
Without
uh,
legacy products. I mean, legacy product, I
mhm,
mean, they're not legacy. They're just uh, traditional products that don't need all the fancy bells and whistles for production. And
right.
there's still a huge, huge sector, just like you said, like the
Oh yeah.
HVAC basic product.
Mhm,
I mean, a lot of industrial side of
mhm,
products that use that legacy type of manufacturing. You
mhm,
don't need everything. You can, again, it's kind of simplified because it's a very old technology. They've innovated it, but I agree
right.
with you 100%. You don't have to have all those bells and whistles and everything. You can
Right.
have very structured, and they're very good at their trait.
Mhm,
That's Excel, and you can quantify them by giving them, because hey, they're good, and nobody's uncovering this gem that
mhm,
could help a lot of others. And that's where, again, your service
right.
comes into value that and become
Mhm,
that source of truth of, hey, wherever you want to go, you're industrial, medical, you're in automotive, you're in, whatever, your aerospace defense, that we
mhm.
have that right fit for you. Correct.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting you bring up industrial because since we're based in North America, all of our factory capacity is in North America. Industrial is a very big product space for us and our customers, and that's where we tend to think, you know, we all get infatuated with like consumer electronics manufacturing, right? It's so difficult, it's so challenging. But when we think about industrial, it runs everything in our everyday lives. I can't, you know, just I'm so dependent even in my home, right, on all this industrial technology. And we tend to overlook that, and we overlook the factories that are specialized in that. And again, we get this model in our head of this perfect factory. But when we start looking at the really successful industrial factories, it's as much about process and data collection as it is about the technology and the equipment they've deployed, and the ability to repeatably and reliably do an effective quality job. And that's what our platform is measuring. Because I don't know if I touched on this earlier, part of how we make this whole thing work is we do secondary QA for all of these factories that are in our network. They're sending a finished good back to us,
Okay.
and we're doing this analysis and actually not just taking someone's word, saying, oh yeah, that we did a good job and the customer's happy. We're actually coming in here and reviewing that, reviewing them against IPC specs, giving them feedback and where they have process defects, et cetera, so they can improve.
So you come about secondary compliance, testing, functionality, process, hitting all the figures, because of course, some manufacturers don't have all those type of things, or they're not they're good at filling a board,
Mhm.
and then they can say, okay, we can do minor testing, but say, of course, like MacroFab can do the finalization to make sure everything's form fit function to the customer's requirements, and adding more value to that service that you're handing the product with, again, 100% guarantee that this is
Right.
to your expectations and the quality standards that you're looking for.
Absolutely, and you get this really great network effect, right? The more customers that flow through our platform, the more factories that we send jobs to, and the more diverse those jobs are, the bigger and better that data set becomes. And with each new design, each new customer coming in, we're seeing better and better outcomes because they're all building on that data set from all of the other customers in our platform.
So, I mean, for target market, I mean, again, industrial people, I mean, it's not a big sector for you. So high mix, low volume doesn't mean it's low
Mhm.
volume. I mean, volume's tens of thousands of products. It's not, but
Right,
high volume is like consumer products when they're making millions. So
right, right.
it's a different ball game, but they're
Mhm.
higher. So I would assume that you're focusing on a little higher end products that are more innovative, correct? You're not going for, I mean, you can do it from MPIs and do the onesie twosies, but I think your goal is to have a higher end product that has more complex than a
Um,
standard.
Well, for us, I think a lot of our products, it varies,
Okay.
right? Some of the products we produce the most of are on the pretty low end of the complexity and the value chain, but they're critical products to, our economy, as it were.
Safety product or something like, anything
Yeah,
like
yeah, energy products, stuff
energy.
like that. We deal with a lot of high complexity, high technology products as well, and that's where we look at it. What works, the customers we work best with are those that tend to have a pretty broad catalog of products,
Mhm.
each having distinct needs, and that's where we really succeed with customers. We work with companies that do produce consumer products,
Yeah.
but will produce, for example, all of the products that build those products,
Okay.
right? The things that they rely on in their manufacturing processes, et cetera. But where we like to say we really succeed is if you've got 10, 15 different products you need managed, and they require 8, 9 different kinds of factories. And you've got that super high technology product, you've got this low technology product, and you're just struggling to go out there and manage all the different factories. That's where we really succeed with our customers. And that's, once they're in there and their engineering teams are in there, their purchasing teams are in there, then they start getting all the value out of the tooling itself and the technology. And they're like, okay, and every day they're able to get more value out of it. And then we find they just bring more and more products into the platform.
I mean, you guys, I think you've been in business almost a little over 10 years now.
Um, 9 years.
Nine
We just
years,
had our
9 years.
ninth anniversary. Mhm.
Yeah, through those 9 years, I know starting up as a were you can't come starting at me, one of the founders. So when you started this company with the same vision, I mean, again, the vision of process and technology, was it a startup business, or did you come out of a business, or did you have you just start a manufacturing company? How did that come about?
We've been a technology startup since day one. I had just, when I decided to start this, I had sold the robotics business, and I had just exited a cybersecurity business I'd started significantly a while back, another technology startup. And so this is the world I know, right? So we're venture backed. We're not kind of a mom and pop kind of shop. We're here to be a big organization, a big growth company. Our investors really believe in the vision of the future that we speak of. We talk about treating manufacturing like a cloud service, like your Amazon Web Services, your Google Cloud. Imagine having at your fingertips all the tools you need to deploy, your products, getting them manufactured at the click of a button on demand. And that's that vision we really started out with. And it really takes a technology mind to get behind it, right? If we had gone through sort of the traditional manufacturing startup process, right, we'd have to first become a profitable electronics manufacturer, and then redirected a little bit of that profit into R&D and technology. And it would just taken us a very long time to get to where we are today. So we went the other route. We convinced software investors to invest in a manufacturing company that also happens to be a technology business.
Yeah, I mean, again, through that. So, have you done? I mean, because you said you guys have your own manufacturing facilities, testing facilities. Through this time, the last 9 years, have you guys acquired other companies, or has it just been still self-grown within?
All organically grown.
All organically.
Yeah. So we haven't acquired any manufacturers or anything like that. This has just been us growing as a team from 2 people on the first day to a little over 2 people in one office on the first day to a little over 200 people in 5 countries today.
It's phenomenal on that scale. I mean, it's just the success of what you can still do in manufacturing. People say it's there is a lot of share, especially what's going on in the world. I mean, now fast forward to say 2020, the pandemic happened. We didn't know for the first 5 months what was going to happen. Did you, on that point, were you also involved? Did you guys get into some of the medical side of dealing with some of those companies, bridging that gap to get products out?
We looked into that. We don't target the medical industry today, and we didn't then. We looked into that, and there were certainly some interesting projects out there. There was, I'll admit, from my perspective, I was a little concerned that there was a lot of interest, but not a lot of meat behind those, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of flash, but I wasn't sure that there was a lot of staying power in that.
Well, it's just the
And
respirators and all the machines they needed for the hospitals, and they want a quick
right.
turn and fast, and they were trying to get as fast as they can get them out.
Right. We
Supply
were
chain.
we were building some of that,
Yeah.
but we didn't jump in, overboard and put all of our eggs in that basket. And we were fortunate that we did, because we didn't have that immediate drop off that a lot of those companies did when suddenly they started realizing that some of that equipment wasn't what was actually needed out there, and they weren't, in a lot of cases, they weren't directing those resources in the right way. So we did get involved and help some of those projects, but it wasn't a very significant portion of our business. A lot of our stuff was still at that time heavily industrial. So
Like, I want to do a little case. Like, I want to question myself. So I want to just follow how, for the listener, people understand in manufacturing, how you would working with MacroFab. So, for example, I'm a an R&D company. I'm a inventor. I invent some type of widget. I have a bill of materials of 250, say, items that are on the bill of materials that go into the board. I have some
Mhm.
plastic molding, some type of connectors, cable assemblies in this process. And, I find your company, hey, can you guys assist me on doing from MPI to full production?
Right,
How is that customer experience? If someone, like, again, I have it all in Excels and all the things, and I have the Gerber files and I have the drawings.
right.
How will we interact? How does that work? How does MacroFab start that initiation of a new customer qualification?
Yeah, so typically for us, for the vast majority of our customers, they start with an engineer signing up for our platform.
Okay.
And then when they do that, they're able to come in there and simply upload the design file straight out of their EDA tool. We also work with Altium. We have a partnership with them, and they're currently about to we released earlier this year an integration directly in Altium Designer, and that's about to go full GA here in the next month or so. So in that case, someone just in Altium Designer just pushes a button. But in our case, we can take your design files, we can take your manufacturing files, you drag and drop them on the screen, and then we instantaneously start pricing. We show you your design, we start giving you the feedback, we show you material availability, pricing, labor pricing down to the individual component level. And you're looking at your design on the screen and seeing a price, seeing a lead time. You can plug in numbers, right? Say, I want 20 units my first prototype run, and we'll say, how fast do you want it? Do you want it in 10 days? Do you want it in 20? Do you want it in 30? And we give you that different price. And then when they're ready to go, they just have a complete e-commerce experience. They can come in, put in their credit card, click the button, check out. It's like ordering from Amazon. Shows up 10 days later, right? Fully built. That's how we typically start our interactions with companies. But what we learned a long time ago, no matter what we like to think as technology people, nobody spends $1 million without talking to somebody,
Correct,
right? And when you start getting into that full product assembly, you've got the plastics, you've got wiring, you got connectors, all this stuff you've got to put together. The reality, what we've learned there is the design information the customer has is often insufficient to fully price and to fully, successfully manufacture. So what we'll do is all of the PCBA prototyping is typically done self-service by our customers. They go through the number of iterations they have. They start locking down designs. We manage that data. And then when they're ready to move into verification of a larger product assembly or start doing larger pricing, they can reach out through our platform and then connect to our sales team and our sales engineering, who will start taking that data. We now know what makes a successful prototype of their board, right? And what works and what doesn't, what the supply chain looks like, and then start merging that with the physical parts. And then, this part is more like working with a traditional manufacturer, but it's, working with a team of engineers to actually figure out how to translate that design into something manufacturable, and then bringing all that data into the platform and making sure we have it in one place, managed, version controlled, all of that, regardless of what the sort of the sophistication of the customer is. They could have a PLM, but many customers don't, right? It's just Excel, like you mentioned, right? It's files sitting in Google Drive, right? So we have to manage that data for them, and we do that through our platform. And then we start, figuring out and creating a strategy for success for that customer. We may be looking at what they're trying to achieve. It may be require 2 factories in Mexico and 1 in the US, with the test equipment necessary that's able to collect the data necessary to feed it back into our platform and provide that information to the customer. So we'll actually help design, manage that whole process. And then when the customer is ready to execute, we push out all that work through our platform, everything from purchasing to materials handling, kitting, building those test fixtures, and routing the work to the factories is all managed by our software platform.
And as the customer giving all that experience and you've discussed, is there a basic cost to that, or the cost happens at transaction point? How does that work for the customers?
Well, at the end of the day, what we go into this saying, customers are price driven, right?
Correct.
Our pricing has to be competitive, right? We have to be, if we're twice the price of going to a manufacturer directly, you're not going to do it, right? Because this is your cost of goods at the end of the day. So we don't charge the customer anything extra for that, right? We give them a competitive price, and it's our job to figure out how to make money in that market, in that environment. And that works between us and the manufacturers, the material vendors, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we provide a cost competitive as if you were going to a manufacturer directly.
Of course, I was just saying, as a customer, it's like, okay, he does all, because you're trying to get a quotation. You maybe come to MacroFab and you go to a couple other people you worked with before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the experience of it, you've explained, MacroFab is a little more immersed. You have a little more services and more digitalization, better UIs, and better customer support on that end to create they come with an invention, they come with a product that they create prototypes themselves, and they just want to have better designs, and you help them go through all of this. The challenge comes to, because again, they're price driven, but MacroFab does all this work. So when they come in and put that, they sign up for the service. Is there
Mhm.
like an NRE cost, or no? It just happens at the point of when they want to place the order. They get
Yeah, it's
that
all
margin is in there.
yeah,
There's nothing to
it's
do with
all part of the
upfront.
transaction cost
It's all
today.
transaction based. Okay, that's
Right.
again,
Mhm.
that's the clarification is to understand, because that, I mean,
Mhm.
that's amazing, because, but it's just to understand that the value it brings us on the back end. That's your duty to figure out the costing, the product, the supply chain, give the turnkey, and you can work with your suppliers to negotiate your margins in there and give
Mhm.
a cost competitive. Because again, you're
Right.
also paying for the service. If you want, if you want a high end service that there's value in it and that there's reliability, or you're just going for the cheapest price,
Mhm.
there's going to be lack of quality, lack of service.
Right.
There's going to be gaps. And sometimes you pay for that convenience, you pay for that service because you get a quality product. At the end of the day, you have to ship this to a customer, have reliability, because if you get returns or it just doesn't work out, there's
Mhm.
even more losses. So educating the customer about that, because again, they're price driven. Like, oh,
Right.
I
Right.
can't afford, I can't do this, or this product should be
Mhm.
more, or this and especially today, dealing with now going into today's world of all the longevity of some of the golden pieces that are missing, some of the challenges
Mhm.
of semiconductor, especially microcontrollers, and some of the high
Mhm.
MOSFETs, IGBTs that go into some of these products that you can't, they come to you, it's like, oh, the pricing of this part, we can't get it. What
Right.
do you do today? How was it putting out the storm, or mitigating that disruption? What did MacroFab do to evolve that to still deliver to their customers?
Yeah, so like a lot of people in this market now, we have strategic sourcing,
Mhm.
like kind of have to, right?
Yep.
There, in a lot of cases, there is material out there; it's just not readily available, and you have to go find and isolate those sources. We do that. We One of the other big things, like I mentioned earlier, is about multi-source inventory management. Um, One of the challenges a lot of our customers have, especially when they're working with different manufacturers, like two or three manufacturers, they have to think about how I'm going to allocate materials to these manufacturers. And that becomes a challenge because maybe you're very, very valuable. You had that one reel of microcontrollers that you really need and you use them in three different products, and you sent them all to one factory, but now they're suddenly held up on another piece of material, and now you can't produce anything else. Right. With MacroFab, we were able to manage that centrally so that we make the decisions about when to release materials to individual factories and so forth, to prevent those kinds of outages and conditions. But I kind of want to roll back just a moment there,
Mhm.
and talk about you know the model and how people can consume from us. We are building a suite of additional services that will be coming out. The first couple of these will be rolling out here at the end of the year, that our customers can buy as software services.
Okay.
And what they will do is they will reduce the cost of their manufacturing. What we're able to do is transition some more traditional human labor efforts, like for example in compliance reporting, test reporting, et cetera, and turn those into pure software services. So we can remove those costs out of their manufacturing. But I don't want to stray from that key point you just said there. How the heck do you deal with materials out?
Yeah.
I, you know, it's a tough world these days, right? There's a lot of technology we have to deploy, where we're able to look at how people are consuming materials and start to try to make some predictions about where our customers are going to go, so we can work with our vendors and suppliers to try to prep some of that. But at the end of the day, we've got a lot of people doing redesigns. Just kind of thinking about some statistics. If we roll back to like 2018, 2019, I had maybe, looking across all of our orders, and we produce thousands of SKUs a year. Looking across all the orders, maybe have 1 to 3% have a material exception,
Yeah.
right? Rolling into 2021, we were getting 70% of orders with a material exception. Now, things are getting a little bit better, but the reality is you're at like 90% of products having a material exception, right? And so one of the we've taken two approaches to this, right? One is using the technology to give our customers flexibility. So one of the big things is everyone goes in with very few alternatives, right? And you think about this, you're getting in the middle of production, you thought you were fine, someone overconsumed, and now you can't go back and buy any more of that part. So you've got this, lengthy ECO process where you're going in there and you're trying to change, work with the factory to get all the design data changed, the machine data changed, so you can use this other part. Well, with us, that can happen on the fly. The second that we're able to identify that there's a part that can be used in that product that won't affect its performance, we can inject that data right into the stream, and it's immediately taken up by the factories and by our supply chain, by everything, right? And we can see that in real time happening. So having that flexibility to very, very quickly redirect our material purchasing and material consumption without having to go through reconfiguring an ERP project, right? Being able to inject that data in there. That's one of the things that we do. The other is, we have a lot of customers, and sometimes people share the same material. Well, since we're managing this in one warehouse for our customers, we're able to work with those customers and see where someone has excess that they want to let go of, and see where someone needs that material and facilitate that transaction on their behalf as well. So there's a lot of things we have here, but at the end of the day, I'm still seeing, in today's market, 15% redesigns, right?
Yeah, I mean there is, and we have
Viable alternative.
we're feeling it the same way. We've had more challenges, but again, it comes to companies that have safety protection, UL approvals, to how easy
Yeah.
it is to change products.
Yes.
They have that power. We know that and been into that. Oh, we have to change. Oh, we found an alternative, but they have to go through UL. So, I mean, I guess, of course, you would have that service to have a UL test to get to that point, have partnerships to do that, but because it takes more time. I mean,
Mhm.
redesigning a board sometimes will take less time than doing full UL safety protocol on
Right.
it.
Oh yeah.
Well, a lot of these, things change. So it is really, but it's a good thing because there was that disruption started that there needs to be multi-level EVLs into
Mhm.
people's designs. Fortunately, they go on online to all the big, catalog houses, and they're just the main tier one brands. They just design them in because it's easy to get. Because again, it's accessible. It's buy.
Mhm.
Okay, this works perfect.
Right.
But the challenge comes to be is our engineers and the sourcing side, and then the purchasing or supply, they're not really they weren't connected before.
Right.
They never had a life cycle.
Yeah.
What the life cycle is a component. How readily
Mhm.
is available? Is
Mhm.
there any alternatives to it in case this does we don't can't get allocation? So now I think it's prevalent in all designs, new designs going forward, that
Mhm.
they can't, engineers have to have multi-level sourcing of 2 to 3 at least into the AVL to prohibit, not just using again the famous brands, having tier 2, tier 3 brands who are just as
Right.
good. They're just
Right.
not as branded,
Mhm.
on that end, and to designed in, as well as working with partners like yourself to
Mhm.
propose those, and having the business intelligence of data, like life cycle process, was made, how fast can readily available, is this a stocking product, is it non-stocking?
Mhm.
A lot of that comes to play is becoming that, and I know managing that inventory, becoming kind of a that creates liability for you too, because you have to hold inventory at that point.
Yeah.
But again, right now, inventory is not a bad thing to have because you can turn faster, right? But
Right.
again, the market is shifting, so that's what I kind of want to go to. Is like it's been great. I mean, you've seen there's a lot of ups and downs. Our industry, again, I call it the Roaring Twenties. How it was 1920s. Hopefully, there's no Black Friday at the end of that, but we're in a digital technology revolution of how we're going to operate and live in this next decade.
Right.
Everything we touch, how we interact, what we do with our lives today, and how we work, everything has a basis of hardware. Communicating now, especially cloud computing, is getting
Mhm.
faster. Once they figure out AI and all that, fast. I mean, compute is just getting cheaper and cheaper and more scalable as the software side, and it is
Right.
people can develop more innovative products. But the
Mhm.
hardware is connectivity, that everything is smart. The initiatives to go green, EV is just booming, going into that. And all the s- all the product verticals that are around EV to supply EV market, charging
Right.
stations, the smart cities. I mean, in the logistics side, it's never ending, and how the touch points of everything. It's
Mhm.
fascinating. But again,
Right.
there is that a pause and goes, like there's an inflection point of how everybody needs to shift and move forward, and looking at businesses surge so much, and we can see we can't grow these double digit numbers so fast over time. What
Yeah.
is your forecast? What do you see right now in the marketplace? Because again, there's a lot of things we can't control, geopolitics, supply chain, pandemic, or wars and things that are going on.
Right.
What is your forecast for the supply chain and for manufacturing in general in the next, say, 2 to 3 years? You see
Right.
23 slowing down a little bit because of external forces, or do you think there's still going to be a huge upsurge going into the next 2 to 3, 4 years?
Yeah. So, I think the way I look at this, and I don't think this is going to be controversial in any sense, right? Consumer is the tail that's wagging the dog here,
Yeah.
right? The You talked about EVs, we talk about computers, cell phones, all these things that are sold mass market that are taking advantage of the cloud computing and the other resources we have available out there, which is a lot of connectivity, a lot of processing power in smaller packages. Right. This is really driving the market for us here. So
Yeah.
what I'm seeing over the next couple of years is it's going to get harder and harder on our industrial customers. It's going to get harder and harder on the automotive customers because not only do they not need this technology, today trying to introduce that kind of technology into their design creates more risk than they're ready to go with. You know, do I go with a 20-year-old microprocessor that does just what I need it to do and does it reliably, or do I bring in a brand new, 5 or 7 nanometer, process design in here that's got 75 functions I don't need?
Yeah.
How do I manage that risk into my product? The problem is that those manufacturers of those components, they're not investing in the older technology. So what's going to happen? So when I say that the consumer is the tail that's wagging the dog, we're really seeing a drying up of the market and the hyper competitiveness in the sort of critical components in our lives, whether it's automotive, industrial, medical, etc. And it's pushing them to basically shift over to the same technology basis as the consumer products. So for the next 2 years, my prediction here is in the industrial space and the older technology space, it's going to be a dog eat dog world without a lot of supply chain. And barring, please, I'm not going to wish for, any sort of global recession here, but barring a global recession, we're going to start having to see these companies that are producing these more industrially focused products having to shift to newer technologies to get anything. So we're going to see a continued, in our space in particular, we're going to see a continued pressure on material availability, and a lot of redesign going on out there, a lot of recertification of products. And I think it's going to happen for the next 2 years. It's going to take time for people to recognize I'm not actually going to be able to produce this product anymore. The competition for the materials I need are just too high, and no one's looking to expand capacity for those.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because the legacy mature products, they aren't profit making for a lot of companies either
Mhm.
anymore.
Right.
They want to invest into new technologies, the microcontrollers, the 5, 7 nanometers. They don't want to make these old 70, 100, nanometer. They don't want to make the old because they're I call it, I mean, same as penny parts. They don't make
Right.
that. So for them, especially the public companies who are they're in business to make money. And I mean, we all know if you guys read these bills and CHIPS Act and all this stuff, there's a very small percentage going into legacy type of production that's actually feeds EV. It does. I mean, a lot of the old technology in EV, set Tesla aside, they're
Right.
using the older kind of matured product,
Right.
into the designs and what's the longevity of that, and then going into industrial side of a
Mhm.
lot of things that we deal with in the mechanics and the way we live today, and the motor drives and the control boards, and there are a lot of that. It's and again, aerospace and defense is another
Right.
one. And I mean, we've that's been a big one because a lot of legacy products that can't, and how difficult it is to change a design
Mhm.
from a 30-year-old product and the longevity of that. So that is a big, thing, and there's not enough investment in that because they don't see the future as having a new tech. It's not and yeah, you brought up a great point. It's that microcontroller. Yeah, I only need to do 2 or 3 functions. I don't need all these bells and whistles. I just
Right.
need to do this, and all those bells and whistles come with also a cost, and
Right.
that cost, until it scales, won't come down.
Right.
Until
Right.
that get to that point, these microcontrollers but the sensors and the sensing and everything needs power, and people don't realize today, as much
Right.
as power is more important than ever.
Right.
Goes from power chargers, and then
Right.
you get the national scale of power needed for nationwides, and this,
Mhm.
building the EV networks, and we're having lacking of power, and we're, a lot of things of power is there. There's a lot of that, again, things that we can't control, but it's understanding where are we going, as well as educating the customers and making the right decisions into the designs
Mhm.
they're trying to make for the longevity of their product. And that's the value of the service companies like yourself can add to the supply chain. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
we see this from our business intelligence, business analytics that we have. We can see X, Y, and Z. And
Right.
if you're going to have a 4 to 5 year or 10-year product run, you got to start looking now of what new
Right.
design, because you're going to get to obsolescence. And a lot of people want to get into stocking products for three, but nobody wants to stock products for 3 to 4 years. I mean,
No.
it's just a lot of liability, a lot of money, you know.
Right. I mean, it's not impactful either, right? Those products become more and more less and less reliable the longer they sit on that shelf. But
Correct.
I think it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? This isn't some fundamental thing that says these chip manufacturers are going to just refuse to produce these older node technologies. It's about a cost benefit analysis, right? If you're looking at one die and you can produce 1,000 chips that sell for 15 cents or 1,000 chips that sell for $30,
Yeah.
from a business perspective, you'd be a fool to make that decision. And so in a lot of cases, we're our own worst enemy in the supply chain because we're only willing to spend that 15 cents on that chip. Well, now who wants to produce it at that price point? But what's the risk there? You got to go to the $15 chip, and you got all these other additional risks. You know, I think we are going to be able to continue to see the older technology in play and available as long as we're willing to pay a higher price point
High
for it,
price. Yeah. I
right?
agree.
And that may be the right answer, and it's going to take a long time to move that market. No, I've been paying 15 cents for this for 30 years, right? Why,
Well,
why do I
today
want?
they're paying $15 or $30 for that 15-cent part because
Right.
you can't get supply and demand at that point.
Exactly.
And I think we've all seen those. We've heard the stories of what's going
Mhm.
on because it's gold. A
Right.
15-cent part is now, I've seen things that crazy, $100 a piece because it becomes gold, and
Mhm.
that's the market, that
Right.
becomes that, unfortunately. But again, I think the inflection of the people paying those PPVs and like, oh wow, but we can still be profitable. Our product can be still then, we don't have to go back to the normal. And then the manufacturer say, hey, we can raise our price, be a little more profitable, still have this
Mhm.
in process, do not
Mhm.
discontinue it. And
Right.
everybody wins.
Right.
Everybody wins. We're not paying
No.
$30 for that part that's 15 cents. Maybe we're paying $2, $3 from a 15-cent
Right.
part. But again, it's better than nothing. And it's better than changing that design. So I think
Right.
that's giving more people, especially the people who are the ownership and stakeholders, to understand, like, what are we doing, and can we afford to pay? Can this product be, especially industrial side. The
Mhm.
consumer, we know that's just driven by
Right.
cost to consumer.
Right.
The industrial side, there is more margin in that, and
Mhm.
there is more ways to work it out.
Right.
But again, that's what I want to understand from your side. What you see the future is bright in that. So, how about from the manufacturing? How do you see? Do you see in the next 3 to 5 years more manufacturing coming back to the states, or you think it's just going to be because or do you think there's more just assembly is going to come back, not more of like just the Ford fillings going to still stay in Asia? What's your thoughts about it?
Um, so PCB assembly, I see it's a growth market for North America. Again, like I said earlier, those days of we're just going to ship everything to China or to Vietnam or to Malaysia, and that's how we're going to do our production. I don't see that as the future. I think that model, the single sourcing through the cheapest market you can find, that's geopolitical tension has kind of said, okay, we're going to put a wrench in that. So what I think we're going to see more of is multi-sourcing, right?
Multi-source.
Going out there and saying, hey, I'm going to produce my product closest to where I sell it. Even if I'm producing it at multiple different price points, the reality is I can't get a product into a market, I can't sell it. I
Yeah.
can't be there, right? And if I have to worry about what, you know, what trade is going to look like between the US and Europe, or China and the US, or, Mexico and India, right? If I have to worry about those things and I don't have a backup response, you're going to be behind the curve as a company. So I think if we look about 10 years out in the future, I would say multi-regional manufacturing and assembly is going to be more of the norm than the exception like it is today. So we're going to see companies producing the same product by default, even if it's not high volume, because we've seen this already with some of the high volume consumer products, is you just can't get enough labor in one place. But that having that be the default, even for lower volume, higher mix kind of products, where it's just not as stable as it was. This isn't the 2000s anymore, right? You can't say I just know trade is going to increase, between these two regions going forward, and you have to be prepared and have strategies for handling that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the BCP plans. I think we went to the pandemic. Everyone's like BCP, business continuity plan. A
Mhm.
lot of people didn't have them. How do we, source and reallocate? And we can't get sources product out of Asia. How do we bring it back? How do we? So I think a lot of more stakeholders are thinking about how do we have these kind of a multi-channel or omni-channel of sources geographically located. Don't put
Mhm.
our simple. Don't put your eggs in all in one basket. Kind of case. What we're gonna do. But I think diversifying, no matter what your supply chain, having key partners that you can work with, that it's not all in one basket either. You have key partners you work with, and they have
Mhm.
different supply chains. You have different supply chains here, and I think that the large manufacturers in general, I think the big Flexes and Foxcons and Sam, they've done a little better job because they're doing that. But again, because they're just such a large scale, they have so much more power. But
Right.
it's a different scale. I mean, you have to look to the middle market, lower market, which is still hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, $1 billion or lower, say $250 billion in states of manufacturing, and
Right.
you just take 10% of that. It's a massive, massive number of what
Right.
you want to bring to the states of the middle manufacturing to do that, because they
Mhm.
don't have all that supply chain power, the power to buy and procurement and
Right.
negotiation. They have smaller teams, but with just like companies like yourself, with the software and the analytics, they can make better decisions of how they're
Mhm.
going to trade, in the get into the micro of it, because the systems are intuitive these days. People were just basing off of gut instinct or feel. Like
Mhm.
let's read the story. The data tells a story. That's the narrative.
Right.
Where do we want to produce? What's the customer needing? And now not just being a product, but also asking the customers, what do you want?
Mhm.
What value does it bring to you? It's not all about the manufacturers. It's like, how would you like, and what are your fears? How can we address those fears? How can we
Mhm.
understand, and surveying them and understanding them and talking to all of them, like, we want to bridge that gap to be that service provider that can make you comfortable that we're producing it. And if something natural disaster happens in some geographical location, that we won't have downtime, that we can still deliver the product. Because at the end of the day, it's been hard because a lot of manufacturers couldn't get those golden pieces or couldn't get their
Mhm.
product. Some people had to shut down because
Right.
they couldn't,
Mhm.
if you can't invoice, you can't get cash. If you're not public, and if you can't
Right.
invoice your product, you can't get cash flow to pay your staff. You can only hold that for so long. And then, as we
Right.
know, in contract manufacturing, manufacturing in general, it's very inventory and cash based and cash flow process. And
Mhm.
it is tough. I mean, I know you guys yourself, even though you're backed, you have venture funds, but you can see there's a lot of movement of money, and again, there's people to
Right.
pay. And if you can't ship a product out, you can't invoice, you
Right.
can't get a receivable, so
Yep. And that's
that's
the
how
and
it
that's
comes
that.
to that full circle of what we're
Right.
dealing with.
Right. And, just thinking about that, we are seeing, at all levels of manufacturers from tier 1 through 5, right? This sort of saturation of inventory levels waiting for one or two parts here.
Yeah.
And, the reality is the old days of just I'll pay you for it when you deliver me a finished good is going away for a lot of those customers as well. They're having to share in the risks with their contract manufacturers, or the contract manufacturers just aren't taking it. They're like, look, I can't be the only one on the hook here, right? If we're going to work together to deliver this product, we have to share in that capital risk. Otherwise, it's just, I need someone that's ready to build a product that has, all material availability, right? Because you can only collect up so much inventory at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. That liability that comes. Well, Chris, it's been great chatting with you, catching up, understanding MacroFab. again, the service you guys are providing the industry, revolutionizing how manufacturing is done, bringing more value and service and technology, forward service to companies, and really, revitalizing and bringing, I mean, the software side, again, your software based of bring that back. And that's really what the hardware industry needs, is to kind of have a disruption to move all of us forward, thinking bigger, thinking smarter, thinking for the future. So thank you for what you're doing and coming into the marketplace. And I can't love to chat with you more, sometime in the
Yeah,
future.
absolutely. And Rob, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation today. It was a lot of fun. And I also look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Yeah, it's been great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for coming on the Real Talk.